Under the dim light of an early evening, Elsie sat on her old wooden chair at the edge of a hillside terrace. The air was crisp after the storm that had passed through earlier in the day, and she could hear the distant rumble of water cascading down the stream below. Her hands were busy with thinning out the rows of chard and beet greens, pulling weeds, straightening the lines with practiced precision. Across the path leading to her garden, a figure appeared. Henry, an elderly neighbor who had been helping her since his wife's passing 10 years ago. He was carrying 2 pots filled with water from his well across the way. When he saw her, he nodded and continued on, walking slowly but steadily towards her vegetable patch. "Thought you might need this," he said when he reached her side, setting down the pots next to Elsie's worn boots. She looked up at him, a quiet thanks in her eyes before turning back to her work. Henry stood beside her for a moment, watching the way she handled each plant with care, as if they were small children needing attention. The silence between them felt comfortable and unbroken. After a few minutes, Henry spoke again, his voice low but clear. "I brought enough for a good soaking." His gaze shifted from Elsie to the garden's layout, noting how neatly it was arranged despite the rough weather earlier in the day. "Thank you," Elsie replied simply. She paused her work and ran a hand along one of the green shoots, as if to assure herself that everything would be all right. Henry bent down to pick up some stray weeds himself, adding them to the pile she had already begun. "I've got to go check on my hens anyway," he said without stopping his task. "Don't mind me." "No worries," Elsie answered softly as she resumed her thinning. She straightened and looked at Henry's back as he walked away, then bent again with renewed vigor. As evening deepened into dusk, the shadows in the garden lengthened. The birds began to sing their twilight songs, a soft melody carried on the breeze. Elsie finished her work for the day, watered all the newly thinned rows with Henry's well water, and walked back towards the house she shared with her husband of many years. The wooden door creaked slightly as she opened it, stepping into the dim glow of candles flickering within. She called out a greeting to her cat, who meowed from its usual spot near the hearth. As she made her way to the kitchen, Elsie noticed a small package wrapped in brown paper by the sink. Curious, she unwrapped it to find an assortment of fresh, local herbs and spices nestled inside. Beside the items lay a handwritten note. *for tea tomorrow. Come early, *. She smiled at the thought of Henry's care for her routine. The next day dawned bright and clear, but as Elsie left the house with her basket for the garden, she saw that Henry had already been there waiting in the soft light, his own pot of water by his side.
You're listening to the Empty Teahouse. Morning dew clings to leaves as night holds on, and autumn sunsets. Cooking smoke rises through the damp earth.
In the quiet alley between 2 clay walls, the sun began to set early in autumn. A narrow strip of sky visible above the wall flushed with pink and orange hues. The smell of cooking fires drifted on the breeze, mingling with damp earth. At one end of the alley stood an old woman selling tea from a small wooden cart. She sat behind her cart, a stack of steaming cups beside her. Her hands were wrinkled and steady, placing each cup down gently. A few leaves rustled in the stillness, carried by unseen gusts that whispered through the narrow passageway. The alley seemed to hold its breath as night settled in. A young man with calloused hands and a faded backpack approached her cart, his steps slow and measured. He paused before the old woman, who looked up at him without surprise. "May I have some tea?" he asked softly. She nodded, reaching into her cart for a cup. The clay walls seemed to grow closer as she handed it over, steam rising from the liquid inside like delicate wisps of smoke. "Thank you," he murmured, cradling the cup in both hands. They sat together on an old wooden bench that ran along one side of the alley. The woman kept her eyes half closed, watching him from beneath hooded lids. He took small sips of his tea, each sip a moment held between them. The silence felt thick and comfortable, like an unspoken bond woven through the quiet. A pigeon landed on the ground nearby, pecking at something invisible to human eye. Its wings rustled softly as it moved away, disturbed by their presence. But neither he nor she seemed to mind. There was no hurry here, only a shared understanding in each sip and breath taken together. Eventually, the young man set his cup down on the bench next to hers. "I've been walking," he began, but trailed off as if unsure what more to say. The woman turned her attention fully towards him then, listening intently with a knowing smile that didn't need words to convey understanding. He continued slowly, "Sometimes I wonder why." The old woman reached out and laid a hand on his forearm, her touch warm yet gentle like the dying sun. He looked down at where their skin met, and back up again. Her eyes sparkled slightly in the fading light, reflecting an inner warmth more profound than any spoken comfort. He seemed to understand something without needing to speak further. Nodding once, he rose from his seat and turned away from her cart. "Thank you," he repeated simply, not as a question but as acknowledgement of the unspoken between them. She watched him walk down the alley until only the back of his head could be seen against the wall's shadowy edges. Then she picked up both cups, his and hers, and returned them to their places on her cart. The sound of footsteps faded into nothingness, leaving behind only silence and a gentle stirring of leaves. Closing time came soon after. Still holding one cup loosely in her hand, she put away the last teapot and shut her cart for the evening. As she did so, a single leaf drifted silently down from above, landing softly atop the now cool teacup like an offering or farewell gesture.
The alley grows silent as evening falls, yet another dusk descends upon a hillside terrace, air crisp with storm remnants and pine.
On a hillside terrace after a storm, two women sat side by side, their backs to the edge where the sky met the earth. The air was crisp and damp with rain, holding the scent of distant pine forests. One woman, Lena, wiped her hands on her apron while the other, Maria, who had just given birth that morning, let out a soft sigh as she leaned against Lena. "Shall we go back to the house?" Lena asked gently, not looking at Maria, but staring straight ahead where clouds were beginning to thin and the sun peeked through. The storm left behind a stillness in the air, and both women felt it pressing down on them like an unspoken presence. Maria nodded, her face pale and tired from hours of labor. She shifted slightly, moving her legs which had been spread wide for many hours. Her body was heavy with sleep and pain, but she could sense Lena's steady support beside her. They didn't talk much as they walked down the hill towards their village. Maria wrapped herself in silence like a cloak. Arriving home, Lena helped Maria into bed, pulling back sheets that smelled of old linen and fresh air from earlier days when laundry had been hung out to dry. After tucking Maria under covers, Lena fetched a small bowl of water, some herbs for comfort, and returned to the bedside. She dabbed at Maria's forehead with cool cloth, her movements practiced and tender. Outside, the wind began to pick up again, rustling leaves in the garden just beyond their window. Inside, Lena spoke quietly about food that might settle stomachs, but offered no details of dishes or flavors. The baby was already asleep in a cradle near Maria's bed, silent as a stone. It didn't wake when its mother shifted restlessly under the blankets. Lena poured water into 2 cups sitting on a low table by the window and placed 1 cup next to Maria's hand. Maria looked at it for a moment before lifting it with care, her fingers touching Lena's briefly as she accepted it. Steam rose from the surface like tiny clouds escaping upwards when released from their liquid form. As they sipped water in quiet company, the world outside began its evening song. Birds settling into branches, insects finding new territory after rain. Inside, there was no urgency or pressure, only a shared moment of presence that stretched between them without words needing to fill gaps. Lena watched Maria's hands tremble slightly as she held her cup, then calm again as if the warm liquid soothed more than just body. After some time, When both cups were empty and watered-down shadows filled corners of the room, Lena stood up slowly and crossed over to the cradle where the baby slept peacefully. She lifted one tiny hand from under a blanket and held it gently for a moment before placing it back down again. Maria watched her, eyes following this small act with gratitude. Lena returned to the bedside, picked up her own cup that had been untouched since she poured it earlier, and drank from it in 3 slow swallows. The room filled with nothing but breathing sounds, deep breaths of sleep for the baby, and more shallow ones for Maria as she drifted off. Outside, stars began to appear through holes torn by clouds. A crescent moon rode low on horizon, like an eye blinking open after long sleep under cover. Inside, Lena bent down next to Maria's bed one last time, straightened out loose covers around her shoulders, and left the room quietly without turning lights back on. Her footsteps echoed softly on wooden floorboards as she moved into night towards door of house. Outside again, air was cooler now, crisp edges of autumn in early evening hour. Lena paused briefly by garden gate, where storm leaves lay scattered, remains of past few hours' drama. She picked up one particularly large leaf that seemed to have settled perfectly balanced on edge between 2 stones like a tiny bridge. Looking back at house door still faintly glowing from inside, she turned and walked slowly away into darkening night along familiar path home.
A leaf crumples softly underfoot in late afternoon light. Shadows lengthen across an old meadow filled with wildflowers and ancient oaks.
Above a sleepy town nestled in green valleys lay an old meadow dotted with wildflowers and shadowed by ancient oaks. In the late afternoon, when the sun cast long shadows through the trees and across the grassy expanse, there sat 2 people, Anna, a potter with hands stained from hours of shaping clay into bowls and jars, and Lena, a girl who had taken to visiting the meadow every day since she could remember. Anna came here for peace after work, where the quiet hum of nature seemed to fill the spaces in her thoughts. Today, as usual, she brought water and a cloth to wash the day's clay from her fingers, but something different happened this time. Lena arrived with an old basket that looked far too large for her small frame. She moved carefully through the grass, eyes scanning left and right before settling on Anna sitting by a tree. The girl's movements were deliberate, almost ritualistic, as she approached, setting down her burden beside Anna. Anna watched Lena without speaking, noting how the child's fingers tightened around the basket handles, then loosened again. When Lena sat close enough to feel the warmth from Anna's side, she turned the basket over, revealing small stones and wildflowers tucked inside. Silence settled between them as Lena began to arrange these items neatly on the ground. She placed each stone with care, some smooth and round, others jagged edges catching sunlight. Beside them, delicate flowers, purple violets, yellow daisies, stood out against the green grass. Each piece seemed to find its rightful place in this tiny arrangement. Anna's gaze followed Lena's hands as they worked, her own fingers pausing mid-rub as she watched. A breeze whispered through the leaves above them, stirring the newly laid stones and petals gently but precisely. Once satisfied with her work, Lena looked up at Anna, a soft smile playing on her lips. Without a word exchanged, Anna reached into her basket where she kept extra rags and pulled out an old cloth that had seen many days of labor. She offered it to Lena with the same quiet intention as Lena had shown in her arrangement. The girl accepted the cloth gently, turning it over to inspect its rough yet comforting texture. Then, without hesitation, Lena handed Anna a single violet from the ground, one she must have saved for this moment. They both understood why. The flower symbolized something shared between them, and understanding passed through observation and silence. As night began to darken the edges of the meadow, they packed up their things separately, carrying with them not just their belongings but also what was found in that quiet space together, a connection born from simple acts. Anna left first, wiping her hands one last time on the cloth Lena had given her. The soft sound of crumpling paper as she tucked it into a pocket marked her departure. Lena remained longer, tending to her flowers and stones with renewed attention before finally gathering them back into her basket. As Anna walked down the path home, the violet pressed against her chest where it would stay until morning, serving as a reminder of the day's unspoken conversations and shared quietude.
Violet's scent lingers faintly on the cloth as twilight deepens. Branches laden with ripe apples sway gently in a quiet orchard.
In the quiet orchard of old apple trees, where branches hung heavy with rosy fruit and leaves rustled in the gentle wind, two men worked silently side by side. One was Jean, a young man who had just returned to his village after years away. The other was Lynn, an elderly orchard keeper known for his patience and kind heart. The day dawned crisp, but Jean felt warm under the soft glow of autumn sun filtering through the branches. He approached Lynn with uncertainty, his hands in pockets, the sound of leaves crunching beneath his boots. Lynn nodded to him from where he stood near a large oak trunk, pruning shears in hand. "I heard you've come back," Lynn said quietly, turning to look at Jean. "It's good to see you." Jean smiled but felt the weight of expectations and memories settling on his shoulders like a cloak. He offered a hand to help clear away fallen branches from earlier storms. Together they walked among the rows, gathering fallen apples into baskets. As they worked, Lynn pointed out old trees that had survived for decades, their trunks gnarled with age but still bearing fruit. "These are our elders," he said softly, setting aside a particularly beautiful apple with no bruise or mark. He held it out to Jean, who took it and felt its cool weight in his palm. Jean wondered what Lynn had seen through the years in this orchard, the comings and goings of people like himself. As they walked back to the old wooden barn where they stored their tools and kept a few simple supplies, Jean noticed a small sprig of dried lavender tucked under one of the beams inside the barn. He pulled it free gently, wondering at its placement. Lynn watched him carefully before speaking. "That was from when your mother used to visit," he said. His voice held a hint of sorrow and joy mixed together. "She would leave bits like that everywhere in her wake." Jin's fingers closed around the lavender as they left the barn, heading back towards the trees. The fragrance clung to his hand now, bringing back memories of childhood visits and simple afternoons spent with his mother under these same old apple trees. Lynn stopped suddenly, bending down to pick up a small stone that shone in the late afternoon sun, a fragment of quartz, smooth from years of being polished by rain. He handed it over to Jean without explanation. It felt cool against Jin's palm, weightless yet substantial. When they reached the edge of the orchard where it opened out into open fields, Lynn paused and turned back towards the trees. "There are days," he said slowly, "when I think about how little we actually know." Jean nodded, understanding in a way that spoke beyond words. They stood together for a moment longer, watching the last rays of sunlight dance across the ground. "Thank you for coming to help today," Lynn said finally. Jean smiled and turned back towards his home, holding tight to both the apple and the stone in his hands. As he walked away from the orchard, he felt lighter somehow, less burdened by thoughts of the past or future. He paused once more at the edge of a field to look back at Lynn's silhouette against the fading light before continuing on. The quiet evening fell over the village, carrying with it the scent of drying leaves and distant apple cider. Jean entered his childhood home, leaving behind him the orchard where he had found an unexpected connection to both family and place. The door closed softly behind him as he stepped inside, holding tightly to the small tokens from Lynn that spoke volumes about a life lived quietly but fully.
An owl hoots softly, its call echoing through the trees, reflecting quietly on evenings past and stories shared. The tea house closes for the night. Until tomorrow.